Hi, today I'm here with a reading of Seamus Heaney's famous poem Digging. First about Seamus Heaney. Seamus Heaney was from Northern Ireland. He was born in Derry, in a actually small town in one corner of the country. He was from the religious point of view a minority because he was a Catholic, and the majority of the people of the population of the Northern Ireland are actually Protestants. So uh, from the very beginning, he had felt something maybe as being part of a different sector group. Anyway, when he was born in 1939, he experienced the first years of his childhood alongside war, the Second World War, and uh, he listened to different radios, so multiplicity of voices and sounds just entered his ear, and he called this a great experience when he was receiving his Nobel Prize in 1995. By the way, he started writing poetry in an official way, and the first volume of his poem was published in 1966. And Digging, this poem is the first poem of that volume. So this is maybe the first poem written and published officially by Seamus Heaney. Of course, this is not the first one. He had published some poems in different magazines, but this is the first poem of the first official volume of poetry. And many critics believe that this poem may be the most important one he had ever written because but he was a very prolific poet. He was continuously adding up to his poetry corpus. But the critics considered this one as the most important one because, according to them, many of the themes which are scattered alongside his years of poetry composition are just in this poem. Themes like the intergenerational relationship of the fathers and the son, or the generational gap in the among the Irish in general, or we can call the relationship of the poet with nature, and of course the landscape of his country. Land, soil is very important for the Irish because the airline is actually, according to them, to many of them, is occupied. So they want to turn it back. So and they want to reclaim their country. That's why the countryside, the landscape, the nature of the country is one of the, let's say, frequently appearing characters in their poetry. Land has a life in the poetry and also in other genres written by the Irish poets. And we see his political, maybe, point of view, his let's say, method of dealing with the history of the country. We can discuss it alongside reading the poem, but just for you to know that this poem is considered as a microcosm of Heaney's poetry, and critics believe that many of the themes introduced in this poem are later on repeating themselves and resonating in his other poetry works. The poem begins like this: between my finger and my thumb, this pen rests not as a gun. Uh, some critics, including Helen Wendler, consider this part as a violent part in Seamus Heaney's poetry, as he makes a big comparison between the pen and the gun. Scott pen rests not as a gun. So he thinks that maybe his pen is acting as or functioning as a gun, as a weapon. And this is not just Seamus Heaney. One of his big predecessors, we can call Jonathan Swift, had already told his critics this, that they just my pen is sharper than all your swords. So this is not just Seamus Heaney, but Jonathan Swift. But had this in your mind, because we are going back to this sentence, to this very sentence, this Scott pen rests not as a gun, and the final part of the poem. Under my window, a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. He's listening to someone doing farming under his window, and this is not just no, actually under his window. There is a metaphorical relationship here. He is above, he is watching from a distance, from a height, someone who is doing farming. When the spade sinks into gravelly ground, my father digging. Now he explains what he's looking at. His father digging, and he looks down. Just see, I look down. This shows maybe not the enmity, but the crash between the younger generation of the Irish and the elder one. Seamus Heaney was living and publishing these poems in a turbulent time. The Irish trouble started in 1969, and it continued almost to 1994. So to Good Friday Treaty. So Seamus Heaney, like many of his generation, think that maybe if their fathers had fought against the British, like what the people did in the southern part of the country, and then they started the republic, they established a republic, they could do so. So this kind of generational or intergenerational problematic relationship somehow engages the minds of this generation, Henny's generation. And anyway, he looks down, and we can add something here. The Shimisini is a poet, and he looks down on someone who is farming. That he considers his position as an elite one in comparison to his father's position and life. This very poem, had inspired some painters and paintings, and this is one of them. That we have Seamus Heaney and his father digging, and Heaney is just watching, and this you see how his head is big, and his father is just one third of the painting, while his head had allocated a great space in the painting. Till his training ramp, we get here he's explaining how his father is, doing something with an effort among the flower beds. Banslow comes up 20 years of age. If the poet comes back 20 years uh, to before this time, his father is doing the same thing. So his father's life has a routine, and he's repeating and repeating and repeating, and he digs and digs and digs, and what he digs out is potato, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. So his father is digging potatoes. The very active digging is a prominent one in this poem. And we have three methods of digging, or three ways of digging. This is the first one, his father who is digging potatoes. Let's read the next part. The coarse root nestled on the log, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. So here he tries with a detail to explain what his father is doing. He rooted out old tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that were picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. So potato actually is one of the symbols of the country, because this is one of the products specific to this country. And anyway, maybe he is also referring to what the ground is gifting to the Irish people here. But there are other gifts as well taken from the land. And this painting shows this part, that his father, with an effort, is taking the potatoes out of those drills. The tall tops are here. Some critics have compared Seamus Heaney with William Wordsworth, at least in this volume, The Death of a Naturalist. The Death of a Naturalist is the volume in which The Digging is published as the first poem. And they say that, like William Wordsworth, he endorses nature, he praises the everyday, and he talks with the everyday language. He's a man speaking to man. So we can have this comparison as well, and the benefits and the beneficent aspects and blessings of the nature And then he continues, by God, the old man, his father, could handle a spade just like his old man, like his grandfather. So it's like across the generations, this is happening that everyone is just digging and digging and digging, but his grandfather is digging something else. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog. Let me just show you what is a bog and what is turf. These are turf, and these are used as fuel in Ireland. The bogs are areas like this. They are shallow, and actually there is just a thin layer of soil over the water, so you may even actually sink into the water if you're not careful. And his father, his grandfather, in such a place is just taking the turf. The roots which are in these areas are used as fuel in cold winters in Ireland, and this is the task of his grandfather. So his grandfather is also digging, but he's digging something else. Uh, and he has a spade anyway. What interconnects his father to his grandfather is the spade he has on his hand. So, and bogs are areas, as you can see, quite uh, a lot of them exist in Ireland. So this is a natural phenomenon. And later on, Seamus Heaney started a series of poems about these bogs and the bodies, the ancient bodies, which were found in such bogs in Scandinavian countries. And he kind of associates the Irish bogs with those bogs found in the bogs in which the bodies were found in Denmark, for example. And so the bog is not just a bog. The bog is a historic kind of site in which you can find many things. And that's why I told you that this poem is considered as a prototypical poem of Seamus Heaney, or they consider this as a microcosm, because later on he wrote bog poems about these very bogs. Here, maybe the indication is just a cursory one, but later on he even gives a character to these bogs, and he wrote bog poems. But anyway, this is what his grandfather cannot find any historic bodies or any Iron Age, let's say, dead body. He cannot take that and this out. He just takes turf out. So he cannot take the history out of this book. And this is later on the poet is going to do. So this is again the generational gap, or the difference between the poet and his earlier generations. Once a carrot, him milk in a bottle, he narrates a personal memory. This is other characteristic of Seamus Heaney's poetry. He interconnects his private personal memory with the memory of the people, with the memory of the nature. So these two types of memories are, and also let's say the political memory sometimes. So the three political memories are always intermingling in his poetry. Once a carrot, him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up his grandfather to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly. So his grandfather starts again to cut, oh sorry, heavily heaving sods the roots over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf digging. So his father is digging for potatoes, and his grandfather going even deeper. So his father just surfed over the surfaces. His father was checking the surfaces and taking the potatoes out. But now his grandfather is going even deeper, going down and down for the good turf. But he is searching for turf. So he's not deep enough maybe in his job. And here, interestingly, the very word digging is used as a full sentence. And this shows the significance of this act, digging, then period. So this is just a sentence in itself. This is perfect. And therefore, we are ready to read the concluding part of the poem. And this is the painting showing the poet, his grandfather, and him bringing maybe a bottle of milk to him. The cold smell of potato mold, the scorch and slap of soggy peat. He's repeating the images so that to give us a sense of conclusion. The curt cuts of an edge through living roots, and the word roots is important here. The living roots, not the roots of the plants, but also the roots of the nation. Living roots awaken in my head. So in my head, other things are awakening, the roots of the people. Seamus Heaney has famously said that I want to awaken the conscience of my people. And now the roots are awakening in his head. So what he's in search of, deep in it, to go to dig for is the memories, the living roots. The living roots in my head, but I've no spade to follow men like them. But I don't search for those roots with my spade. I'm no farmer. I'm no turfer. I'm someone else. I'm a poet. So my task is different. I have a better idea in mind to do with digging. So I also dig like my father and my grandfather, but I do it differently between my finger and my thumb. I'm also digging the soil. I'm also digging my land. The Scott Penn rats. I'll dig with it. So he thinks that by writing about those memories, by writing about what is Irish past, he can give a sense of presence to what is lost, to the lost memories of the people, the memories of a people, of a nation who are colonized, who were always under attack because they were a defenseless kind of island, and now he'll dig with it to help the people remember them. Uh, and this is what he's doing with his pen. That's why the Scott pen rests stops here and snug as a gun is not added. It seems that the original resolution is something else, but the final solution, the final resolution the poet is going to is something else. He changes his mind. At first, pen and the gun are similar or they are parallel to one another. But here, the gun is no more. He has a pen and he tries to dig with it instead of using the gun to shot someone to make his poetry biting. He'll dig with it. He dig with it so that he can help his people to remember something which is deep down in their memories. So this was my explanation, and I hope you have enjoyed it.